it's hard for me to gauge the lighting. And so yesterday, I wound up working down to my lines on this one. So it's nice and consistent thickness. Got the face shape cut, the face, you know, face of the ball. And then just draw a knife down to my lines. And it's pretty easy actually, and it's nice because you don't go into fibers on a taper. If you do it correctly, you're going kind of away from the fiber, so you don't risk any tear out, so to speak. The next step on this one is I'm going to use my scribe-o-matic here. I'm going to take you to the place of getting inside my mind, which is kind of a scary place, just because of the disorganization and I'm thinking about 20 things at once. Okay, so the center. Mark the center. Lines on the side. That's center of the bow. Then you break each limb into thirds and draw a line. Line, first third from the handle, second third. So now I've got 3 zones on each limb. I'm going to take this and I'm going to mark it and scribe a little beyond the thickness of the handle, because I still want to have like some margin to remove. I don't want to remove too much wood. So 3/4 of an inch, let's say. That's plenty thick. And I'm going to mark that as the center, starting from the tip. So I'm going to take that line 3/4 and go through my first third mark, through the handle, past that third mark. Now I'm going to pinch it closed so I've got a noticeable difference, but not much. And go previous, before that first third mark, and go past the second, the last third mark. So this is my third mark. I'm going to go past it a bit. Pinch it close because I want it to be a little thinner. Third mark here, I'm going to start before it, pass through it. And I'm doing this on side, 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 side. All at the same time, so this is the same. Before that third mark, all the way to the tip. Then I'm going to work it down. I'm going to get a taper. It's not going to be step, 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 because I want beyond, right? And I'm using my eye. I'm going to go inside. I am eliminating. I'm going to break each one of these thirds into thirds again. But I don't need to draw any pencil lines because close enough estimating. Go inside. I'm eliminating that pencil line. Now I'm going right to the pencil or pen line. Pens are good, but you have to have very, smooth sides. That middle third goes right. I can see that pencil line. And then the last third, I'm going beyond it. So there's a little bit of wood left on there before I hit the pencil line. Now I'm going to go, I hit the next line, right? I'm going to go inside the pencil line. I'm eliminating it, or pen line. Now I'm riding along it, the middle third of the middle third. Now I'm going to go this way. And so there's a little bit of wood. Now I'm meeting the last one. And I'm going to do the same thing. Inside the line, along the line, outside the line. In that way, I will get a taper, which will allow me to start seeing, because I was very accurate drawing these lines and working down to them, the growth rings. Now it's topo map time. The points, they point downhill. Taper. I'm going to have a growth ring probably here. This is going to, no growth rings. I'm going to see, then I hit a growth ring, and then I'm going to hit another one, then another one, then another one, then another one, and it depends on the thickness of the growth rings. And I can get a spacing that in real terms will be the biggest distance of just no growth rings will be here. Then it'll start tightening up as I go towards the handle, and then they might pile up a little bit at the handle. And that will give me kind of, not a constant taper, a line, it'll give me a curve, a very, very shallow curve, which works well with bows. And then this way you can actually get a tillered bow without it ever seeing a string on a piece of wood that is basically homogeneous, a big tree, so there's not much difference in like the thickness of the rings here than here. You know, if this was the base, they would be a little wider and a little narrower up here. But that is well within than just curing with a sanding block on a big tree, because there's not much difference in the thickness of the growth rings from end to end on a big tree, on a short bow. Now on this one, it's number 4. The other 2 are over there, my commission bows. Got this beautiful piece. It's kind of wiggly waggly propeller twisted. Analyzed it before I took the bark off. Yeah, that's going to be good. I've got like, there's a knot thing happening here, but it's going to be on the side I'm not using of the stave. I've got a split here, but see, it's plenty wide for the tip, so it's not going to affect anything. And I'm going to get rid of this whole side right here. And it's going to be a bow that's a little more than 1 inch wide, so my thumb is about 1 inch wide. Oh, I've got a big margin for error. So I scraped off the bark and got rid of some of the sapwood. You can see right now I'm working down to that growth ring in heartwood. And I haven't hit it yet, but when you get close, you start seeing yellowish. And so I want to get that even yellowish, getting close the whole length. But before I did that, see this? I've got nice solid yellow wood, greater than the finished thickness of the bow. And I'll have a little bit more because I'm not going to cut it to the finished width right away. And every time I narrow it, I'm going to get a thicker bunch of wood here, and that's good. So far, I can ask myself, can this be the bow I want? And my answer is yes, because look at, that's plenty thick for that. Almost perpendicular to the plane of the back, but again, margin for error, making it a little bit wider. I draw knifed it. I followed a single fiber the whole width, so it's good. I could then, you know, knots will change things a little bit. Just scribe it and then just whatever, any way I do it. Chop it with a hatchet, run it through the bandsaw, whatever. But I can take my scribe-o-matic, scribe greater than the width of the bow, following this edge, and then because there's not a lot of knots going, this little pin knot's not going to affect anything. Just work it down to that line, and chances are it'll more or less follow the fibers because I'm following the fibers on this side. But yeah, right now what I'm doing is, why not? Even though if I was to narrow it, working down to a growth ring on a narrow stave is easier than a wider stave. It's still not that wide, you know, so I am going to work it down to a growth ring before I knock off this side right here and get it to the finished width, and then work on thinning it right here. Now an easy way, it's all about wood removal. Suppose you had this big clunky piece that was much, you know, bigger than this, and you wanted to remove this belly wood. What I've done in the past is just take a handsaw, stick it down here, and you want to have reference lines right here. So I would scribe it, you know, to whatever, 2 inches, far beyond the thickness of this bow, and then just saw down to those reference lines, and then you can just take a chisel and stick it in there and just knock the wood off. I could do it on this side too, but I don't do it. I wouldn't do it on this side because the risk of damaging the bow and ruining the stave is great. But getting rid of like all this stuff, I could split it, but the safest way would be just saw every so often down to your reference lines that you scribed, and then again chisel, ching, 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 knock that off, and then you can go back and draw knife it to do whatever you want. But yeah, that's about it. I am going to continue on my path here of working down to the growth ring, and it's tricky on this. Typically, on a self-bow and Osage, you will pick a target ring. Look at this. See those fat ones right down there? You would pick one of those fat woods because it's easier to get your draw knife to like work it right down on a fat one. But this won't allow me to do it. I'm working through on the sapwood. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of rings per inch. I'm going to see, hopefully you can see how thin those are. And so it's a little trickier to work down to a growth ring. In this case, it's close to working down to a growth ring in maple, you know, where you don't have much color variance, which I've done before. I've worked down to growth rings in maple, and oak is a little easier than maple, and all sorts of woods. And when they start getting very uniform in color and very thin, you might have to resort to just scraping down there and getting it in the perfect kind of light so you can actually see. You know, this is going to be a little easier because I'm going for white, from white to yellow, but still, those are thin growth rings. And picture this, you got a fat growth ring, right? And you think, well, I work to that growth ring. You can still violate fibers within that growth ring. So, you know, this is careful stuff beyond me to concentrate on that and doing a video and talking. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's what I'm doing. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I've got a lot of twists to take out in these 4 bows. Every single one of these staves is propeller twisty, and the only differences are Rob's bows. Rob and his friend in the UK having me doing 5 bend bows. Those aren't roller coastery, they're just propeller twisty. Well, that's Osage. You work with what you have and find ways to manipulate it to your will with heat. Yep. Sometimes you have to rub grease on them to help the bending process with heat. And then you got to clean it off with a lye solution, which is extremely dangerous. A little known fact outside of our bow tribe, because we all know this, is that when you take a very strong alkaline solution, red devil lye, and you mix it with grease or fat, creates soap. And so it's kind of a funny thing. I done greased my bow to dry heat it, even though it's a grease heat, into the shape I want. It's greasy, not very conducive to sinew backing. When you hit it with the lye, you do a couple things. You soapify the grease on here, which is wonderful. You also change the color of it, which is a neat effect. Make a board bow out of oak, right? And you hit it with lye. It changes the color of it. It kind of antiques it in a way. Does it damage the wood? Perhaps. But again, sinew. Well, that is all. I'm done talking. I'm done.